Welcome back guys. In this video I'll be comparing the image quality and performance of two frame generation techniques, LSFG 2.2 and FSR 3.1. The former is a universal frame generator built using machine learning, works on any GPU, whether it's from Intel, Nvidia or AMD, it does not matter. It's included with a paid application called lossless scaling, selling on Steam store for around $7. The latter is AMD's free frame generation technique that works on any GPU as well. Intel, Nvidia, AMD does not matter. FSR relies on optical flow technology and game data like motion vectors. This is why it cannot be implemented on a driver level basis like FSR version 1. It's up to the game developers to implement FSR in their games. I'll be also combining these two frame generation techniques to see what happens. For example, let's say a game is running at 40 FPS, then we enable LSFG. FPS should increase to around 70 to 80. Then after enabling FSR frame generation, FPS should theoretically increase to around 140. I am expecting the input delay to be a problem in such a scenario. We'll see. I'll kick things off with Spiderman Remastered. We'll be running games on my Rog Ally. This game officially supports FSR 3.1. In games that don't officially support it, I'll be using DLSS Enabler mod. It's a free mod that works on any GPU, even works on SteamOS. For this game I have set the UMA buffer size to 6 GB. My Ally is running on the latest official GPU driver, BIOS version 339. Using a 25 watts manual profile, all 3 power values set at 25 watts. Full HD resolution CPU boost disabled. Connected my GUI kit, KK3 Max gamepad to Ally via Bluetooth mode. Before starting the game, I'll just start lossless scaling application. It works as an overlay. Just need to keep the app running in the background. LSFG 2.2 mode X2 frame generation. Performance mode enabled, clip cursor setting enabled, not using any of lossless scaling's upscaling algorithms. Sync mode set to default, max frame latency set to 3. This will allow the game to run at an FPS higher than the display's maximum refresh rate. Draw FPS setting enabled, capture API TXGI. That's it. Settings, start as administrator setting enabled, hotkey for enabling. LSFG control alt and S. I'm just checking my keyboard. Minimize the app, start Spiderman. Game settings. Full HD resolution display mode full screen. Upscale XCSS using its quality preset. Frame generation disabled for the time being. VSync off. Medium preset. Motion blur and frame constraint set to nil. Eternal in settings. VSync on. VSync off. Game's FPS won't be capped at 120 now. Anti-lag setting disabled. That's it. Using a custom afterburner overlay to show you the performance metrics. Okay, here FPS is within a range of 50 to 60 on the street, swinging around. First I'll enable LSFG, no graphical artifacts, without frame generation. Enabled it, pressed its hotkey. Base FPS is around 46. FPS with frame generation is within a range of 80 to 90. Okay, Spidey's head is flickering. It's flickering aggressively. I don't think anyone can play the game in this state. Base FPS dropped to 38. Under 40, but game is still running smoothly. It's due to the frame generation effect. It applies a smoothing effect. Okay, now I'll just disable LSFG, enable FSR 3.1. Frame generation set to FSR 3. Yeah, game is running very smoothly. 80 FPS with frame generation. Spidey's character model is not flickering. It's an easy win for FSR 3 in Spiderman. Interface is not flickering, but there is a graphical artifact. Let me just swing around. Observe Spidey's shadow on the ground. Yeah, it's flickering. See, bit difficult to spot this artifact on a small display like the one on Ally. Not a big deal, minor artifact. Okay, now I'll enable LSFG without disabling FSR 3. Let's see what happens. 80 FPS. I enabled it. Okay, Spidey's head is flickering, so LSFG is definitely working. And let me just swing around. Base FPS dropped to around 60. Okay, Spidey's shadow is also flickering. This means FSR is also working. So both of these frame generation techniques are working simultaneously. But I'll be honest, the performance gain isn't much. You are better off running the game with any one of these frame generation techniques. For this game it's FSR 3 due to the less graphical artifacts. FPS with frame generation enabled 120. I'll be honest guys, latency is not a big deal with both of the frame generation techniques enabled. I was expecting very high latency. That did not happen. Now I'll test the next game. Now I'll be running a very demanding title. Let's see what happens when we combine these two frame generation techniques. In Alan Wake Part 2, we'll be enabling FSR 3.1 using DLSS enabler, 6GB UMA buffer size. I dropped the resolution to 900p in order to maintain an FPS within a range of 30 to 40. Facing on, VSync disabled, anti-lag setting enabled. Display mode borderless. DLSS upscaler, it's basically XeSS version 1.3 using its balance preset. Frame generation disabled for the time being. In-game VSync disabled. Motion blur, film grain and lens distortion effects disabled. Low to medium settings, SSAO enabled. Let's check out the performance. There's a character. Here FPS is around 40. These things are attacking me. I'm just running around. And this is the gameplay without frame generation, 33 to 45 FPS. Not bad. RAM usage is close to 5 GB. Game has received many updates since launch. Performance has definitely improved now. Okay, I'll just enable LSFG, reload the same sequence, and can observe the added amount of smoothness. FPS increased to around 60. Unfortunately, our character's head is flickering. These things. Base FPS dropped to around 30. Yeah, aggressive flickering. Performance gains are definitely there. Now I'll disable LSFG and enable FSR frame generation. Enable frame generation. I'll just reload the same sequence. Flickering of a character's head is a common artifact present in many games when using LSFG. Even FSR frame generation has its own common artifacts like ghosting around the edges of the display. I'll try to demonstrate this. You can see around the left edge double images. This issue won't occur when our character is in the middle. Okay, FPS is within a range of 60 to 70. Can observe the added amount of smoothness. I'll be honest, LSFG's performance was slightly better, but our character's head is not flickering this time. Interface is not flickering as well. This is FSR 3.1. Frame pacing graph does not seem to be very accurate. It's producing a lot of spikes. I'm not observing these hitches while playing the game. Now I'll just enable both LSFG and FSR 3, reload the same sequence. Okay, so we started from 33 to 40 FPS and now we are getting around 110 FPS. Oh my god, it's happening. So many fake frames. And I'll be honest guys, input delay is not a big deal. You can actually play the game with both of these frame generation techniques working together. FSR frame generation latent artifacts. Oh no, low on HP. Just restore my health. I'm just trying to observe a character's head and moving the camera in complete circles. These creatures are not allowing me to do that. Yeah, her head is still flickering. Both of the techniques are working. 90 to 100 FPS. I think LSFG's performance is overriding FSR frame generation's performance. Wouldn't recommend using both of these techniques together. I'll be testing the next game. Now I'll be running Witcher 3 Steam version. We'll be using the DLSS enabler to enable FSR 3.1 Full HD resolution. Adrenaline settings, FreeSync enable, FreeSync disable, anti-lag setting disable. Graphics setting, I am using the medium preset. DLSS enable, which is basically XeSS version 1.3, using its balance preset. Motion blur disable. That's it. Display mode borderless, full HD resolution, frame generation disable for the time being. There's Geralt. I'm standing at the entrance of Novigrad. Base FPS is close to 40. That's just perfect. We'll be enabling two frame generation techniques. Input delay standard, out of Rog Ally VRR range 48 to 120. First I'll enable LSFG. It's working. Base FPS dropped to around 33. LSFG comes with a performance hit. Oh no, graphical artifacts. Geralt's head is flickering. FPS with frame generation enable is close to 70. Can observe the added amount of smoothness. I am also observing some garbled textures around the bottom edge of the display. I think the interface is flickering when I move the camera in complete circle. Now I'll just disable LSFG and enable FSR 3.1 on. Back to the game. FPS increased to around 60. Yeah, I can observe the added amount of smoothness. Consistent performance. Character model is not flickering. Game's HUD is also not flickering. Another win for FSR 3.1. Input delay is not a big deal. Manageable. FPS almost always stays above 60. Now I'll enable both of the techniques. Okay, the base FPS dropped to around 50. FPS with frame generation on 100. Again, this is happening. We started from 40 FPS and reached 100 FPS. Camera seems to be moving so quickly. It's literally flying. Both of the techniques are working. It does not feel natural to play the game this way, I'll be very honest. Better to just use FSR frame generation again. But you can run the game using both of the techniques. I'll just enter Novigrad. Yeah, I can observe the garbled textures around the bottom edge of the display. This terrain makes it easy to observe the garbled textures. See? Blurriness can be observed. These are LSFG related artifacts. $90 FPS in Novigrad. Unbelievable. Game is running at full HD resolution, medium setting. I'll be testing the next game. Now I'll be running Hogwarts Legacy. For this game, need to set the UMF buffer size to auto. Adrenaline settings, FreeSync enable, VSync off, anti-lag setting off, 900p resolution. Display mode set to windowed full screen. DLSS enable. It's basically XeSS version 1.3 using its quality preset. Frame generation disabled for the time being. in-game basing, motion blur disabled, film grain disabled as well using the low preset. I'll load the Hogsmeade area. There's my character standing at the entrance of Hogsmeade. FPS here is within a range of 50 to 60. Sprinting around, explore the area. No frame generation technique. Yeah, FPS suddenly dropped down to 43. So the choppiness. I'll just enable LSFG now. Back to the game. Okay, I'm observing some garbled textures around the character model. When I move the camera in complete circles, character's hat is flickering as well. Smoothing effect has been applied. Frame pacing graph does not seem to be accurate. So many jitters. I'll just disable LSFG now and enable FSR 3. Frame generation on. Same area. Can observe the added amount of smoothness, 85 FPS. Not observing any graphical artifacts. Not easy to observe them on a small display. Game's interface is not flickering, subtitles are also not flickering. I'll just sprint around. The frame pacing graph is mostly flat. Very impressive performance. FSR 3.1. This particular area is very demanding. Okay, let's enable LSFG now. FSI is already enabled. Okay, I'm observing some choppiness. Yeah, FPS is around 140, higher than LS maximum refresh rate value, that is 120. So would not recommend enabling both of the frame generation techniques. Character's hat is not flickering now. The effect has been reduced. Okay, it's flickering. I can observe some screen tearing around the left and right edges of the display. This artifact is related to FSR frame generation. Camera movement feels a bit heavy. I'll just disable LSFG. Yeah, it's much better now. I'll be testing the next game, Horizon Forbidden West. This game officially supports FSR 3.1. I'll be running it at 720p resolution. At higher resolutions, game can crash when you enable both LSFG and FSR 3. 720p resolution, FSR disabled for the time being, VSync off, XeSS upscaler enabled using its quality preset, low preset, motion blur strength set to nil, FreeSync enabled, VSync off, that's it. There's Aloy. Here FPS is close to 40. Even with the low preset, this game looks absolutely gorgeous. XeSS upscaler does a good job. Okay, I'll enable LSFG now. No graphical artifacts. Enabled. Can observe the added amount of smoothness. Unfortunately, Aloy's head is flickering. It seems the interface is flickering as well. A bit difficult to observe this effect. The performance gains are definitely present. 70 to 80 FPS with frame generation. Input delay is not an issue. Now I'll disable it and enable FSR 3 on. Resume the game. 70 to 74 FPS. It's a very smooth experience. Both of the frame generation techniques produce roughly the same performance. Not observing any graphical artifacts around LOS character model. Interface is also not flickering. Oh my god, just observed a graphical artifact. Look at this line ghosting around it. It's the line of fire. And what's with this interface? I'm observing some garbled textures around it when I move the camera in complete circles like this. These are FSR 3 related artifacts. Both frame generation techniques come with their drawbacks. Now I'll enable LSFG as well. Back to the game. FPS increased to around 130. Yeah, I'm observing some artifacts around Aloy's head, garbled textures and flickering of the head. Not observing any significant increase in performance with both of the frame generation techniques enabled compared to any one of the techniques enabled. Not recommend using both of them. Let's quickly show you some combat. Input delay is not a problem. You can play the game with both of the techniques enabled. Oh my god, look at this interface, garbled textures around it. The HUD element, games interface. Quarry site full of bristlebacks. All hell is going to break loose. Trying to do some elemental damage. Base FPS here is around 50. Oh my god. Even in Horizon, I would recommend using FSR 3.1 frame generation, the official implementation. Less graphical artifacts, consistent performance. Time to conclude the video. Both of the frame generation techniques were able to improve the game's performance. Even when some games were running at a lower FPS like 40, the performance was neck and neck. Input delay was not an issue with either of these frame gen techniques. However, when it comes to graphical artifacts, I have to give the win to FSR 3.1. It produced less artifacts than LSFG 2.2, especially when the games were running within an FPS range of 30 to 40. Common LSFG artifacts include flickering of character model's head, some garbled textures around the character model and around the bottom edge of the display. Even FSR has its common effects like ghosting and screen tearing around the edges of the display, but these artifacts are not easily observable, especially when you are using the technique on a bigger display. Hopefully, the artifacts present in both of these techniques will be fixed in the near future. I even tried combining these two frame generation techniques. I'll be honest, the performance gain was not much noticeable compared to using any one of these frame generation techniques. In some games, frame pacing issues were present. It is possible that things may differ on a PC with a more powerful GPU. Input delay was not a problem even when both of the frame generation techniques were enabled. So that's it with the video guys. I hope you found it useful. Thanks for watching and have a nice day.